Good evening. You're listening to Sharky with Sharko's Chomp. It is November and we just recently passed a wonderful Halloween. Halloween, the night of October 31st, some people call it All Saints Day, commonly celebrated by children dressing up in delightful costumes, going around the neighborhood, soliciting for candy and treats and door to door. But Halloween, All Saints Day, it is a celebration of those that have passed. Which brings us to those that do believe in the Day of the Dead, a holiday that is separated between October 31st and November 2nd of this year. It's a day that the dead are remembered, celebrated, mourned, and just taken back in the heart. But with remembering death comes, of course, the unfortunate tragedy of death. And there's been beings out there, harbingers of doom, animals, spirits, and whistles and mysterious words on the wind of death to come. So let's look up into the world of supernatural and discuss some of these things that could be lurking outside your window, warning you of possible doom. The Mothman. The Mothman may be the most well-known paranormal harbinger of doom in the world. Seen many times throughout our history, this creature was witnessed by multiple West Virginians throughout the 1966 and 1967 area, prior to the collapse of the Silver Bridge on December 15th of 1967. Now, while there's no question that the Mothman is never something that you want to see, there are disagreements about its purpose, whether or not the creature is simply a harbinger of doom, or if it actually causes the destruction that comes in its wake. One of the final Mothman sightings that were actually recorded down occurred prior to the Silver Bridge's collapse, leading many to believe that out of all of its appearances were meant to warn people about the accident. However, some people have even claimed to see that the Mothman near that same bridge just before it fell into the river. Similar to the Mothman comes a story about the Black Bird of Chernobyl. Beginning of April of 1986, people living near the Chernobyl nuclear power plant began to see a giant winged creature that looked like a headless man with piercing red eyes. People who saw the creature claimed to have experienced horrible nightmares after seeing it coasting on the wind. And after the meltdown of the power plant on the morning of April 26, 1986, multiple workers who survived the initial blast described seeing a very large black bird-like creature flying through the noxious smoke pouring from the reactor. Now that bird was never seen again. But eerily coincidental with our Mothman story, a harbinger of death, or a creature warning the men below. Danan Roos. Danan Roos, described as a red, impish creature, looking like one you would see in a cartoon of a devil. This creature has been cited as early as the Battle of Bloody Run in 1763, and as recently as 1996 when something in a nasty red coat was seen fleeing the scene of a petty burglary crime. But a little devil causing mischief, running from mischief, running to it, is a matter that no one wants to see. We travel from war to the sea in our next chapter of the Flying Dutchman. According to legend, in the 17th century, a ship named the Flying Dutchman was sailing around the Cape of Good Hope when it ran into a fierce storm. Rather than batten down the hatches and head in the opposite direction, in other words, running from it, the captain ordered the ship to continue sailing into the inclement weather. The men were washed overboard, and the captain was cursed to sail around the world forever. Now, any sailor today may or may not have seen that exact Flying Dutchman while they're out of port. And if they do, they know that something terrible is going to happen. The Flying Dutchman, a harbinger of doom out at sea, a warning of dangers and bad weather to come. Or maybe it's a cursed vessel doomed to sail the seas forever, whether it's bringing hope, harm, or fear. The Sea Wraith. Now, before we discuss what the Sea Wraith is, there are a lot of tales of similar creatures and beings all around the world. The Sea Wraith, described as the Wailing, comes from Wales. In Wales, one of the most objectively magic islands of the United Kingdom, this wailing is said to be the sound heard by someone or a group of people who are about to suffer a terrible accident. Sometimes the Sea Wraith comes before fires, car accidents, and sometimes natural disasters. Now, coming face to face with the Sea Wraith, of course, would be far worse. Described as a robed and hooded spirit, it was said that anyone who ran into this Welsh wraith would die, or there would be a death in their family. The Sea Wraith comes in many different forms and tales around the world. Sometimes it's known as a Green Reaper, but in all tales, the Sea Wraith is something to be feared when it warns you of what's to come. The Demon Cat. Many historians attribute this spooky cat to being the spirit of a feline who was brought into the basement tunnels of the Capitol buildings to kill rats and never left. Now, what I mean by the Capitol buildings, that brings us to Washington, D.C. Cats, lovable pets, mischief makers, and sometimes jerks, are nothing compared to a demon cat. In Washington, D.C., if you work in the Capitol buildings, you probably won't see the cat unless something terrible is about to happen. The demon cat allegedly sided the night before the assassinations of both President Lincoln and President Kennedy. The demon cat, sometimes described as black, sometimes described as white, comes in different forms. But a cat, whether alive or dead, is not always bringing the best of friends. The white deer. The myth of the white deer comes from the old Celtic people. It was said that if you see the white hart, then death, or at least disaster, can come to you or your loved ones. Throughout time, the reputation of the white stag did improve in the Arthurian age, when it came to represent the moment that Arthur and his knights needed to leave for a quest. Now, no matter which legend of the white deer you believe, it is best to avoid any albino deer. Run away, hide, but don't let it come to warn you. Now, there are spirits of the white deer. Some are said to bring fortune, and in other tales, of course, doom. The white deer, said to be a spirit of the forest, could also save lives. The white deer is said throughout different parts of the world. To some are heroes. To some are deaths. And it's up to you to decide, does that albino deer really mean to bring you the worst of harm? Taking a trip from the world, we come back home talking about family ghosts. Being haunted by members of your family might be a warning to look into your own family history. They might be bringing a sign or warning of your own medical history, a sickness or disease that may be brewing within you that you may not know. They might be warning of possible things to come. Disaster out in the street, a world-changing experience, or just something related personal to you that could put your life in danger. There are many that claim family ghosts bring peace, warmth, love, happiness, but that's not here. Here, we're talking about the worst. We're talking about ghosts that can bring you into their own world, possibly saving your life, possibly taking it. Black-eyed ghosts, also known as black-eyed children or black-eyed kids. The black-eyed ghosts have been reported to be a source of misery from Texas to England and different parts of the world. They come in usually as little kids wanting to come inside, sometimes asking for help, seeing if you can take them to their mommy or daddy. Asking to borrow your phone seems to be the big story behind them. But in any case, they're always asking to be invited in. Now be careful inviting children that may be knocking on your door in the pouring rain. Ask yourself, why are these children out so late, and whatever did happen to their parents? But if you do bring them in, some people have no memory of what did happen. Some people report misery. Some people report nightmares. Some people report hearing their calls and their wails all around their ears. In any case, inviting a black-eyed ghost into your home, into your sanctuary, and even into your car might be bringing a lot more to your door than just helping a kind little child. The Gormans Ten Foxes. One eerie legend from Ireland states that prior to the death of the head of the household, a pack of foxes will congregate around the home. According to Lady Gormanston in 1908, at the time, Jenico William Joseph, the 14th Viscount Gormanston, was dying. Foxes were seen about the house and coming towards the house for some days before. His valet, who was sleeping in his room, heard what he thought was a dog barking, and on going over to the window, found that it was a fox sitting under the window and barking. At the death of Edward, the 13th Viscount, the foxes were also there. He had been rather better one day, but then the foxes appeared, barking under his window, and he died that very night, contrary to all the expectations of both medical staff and family. This brings us the Gormans Ten Foxes. Gormans Ten Foxes. Seeing any fox around your door might be a warning, but when they're howling, when they're yelping, when they're crying outside your window all night, it's best to look out for those loved ones that could be near death. Banshees. Banshees might be one of the most underrated spooky specters in the entire eerie catalogs of ghouls, goblins, and mysterious creatures. Usually those that have witnessed the true calling of banshees usually have no proof, no evidence, and usually that gets brushed under the table. It's said in Irish lore that every family from the Isle has their own personal banshee. That's a terrible way of having a family curse. And it always lets out a gruesome wail prior to one of the descendants passing away. Usually the wailing can be heard from miles away, as the sound of the ghostly woman's cries grow louder the moment of your death grows closer. Now I myself have heard of a banshee cry in the middle of the night. Again, similar to this story, sounded very far away and it did come closer. Similar to one of our previous stories about the black-eyed children, it's best not to go investigate. Close your windows, close your doors, pretend like it was never heard to begin with. Whatever you do, don't go meeting a banshee, and don't go inviting one inside. We discussed cats, now let's discuss the Hellhound. The Hellhound, or as it was known in the folklore of northern England, the Barghest, is a kind of goblin dog with giant teeth and claws that only appears in the dead of night to those who are about to die or pass on from this world. The Barghest has many variations across England, but the strangest one is named Trash. Trash, like the garbage that you throw away, Trash haunts Lancashire and has backwards facing feet that make a splashing sound when it walks. The Hellhound, like this strange version, comes in many forms. In other tales it is known as the Black Dogs, the Black Beasts, Demon Dogs, and usually described as the color of black with glowing eyes of red or yellow. In any case, the Hellhound has been known to pass even holy grounds, said to be sent from the soul collectors themselves to pierce any religious barrier and take what they've been told to take. The Green Lady of Stirling Castle. Burtonson, Scotland, could be home of one of the spookiest ghosts. It is known as the Green Lady of Stirling Castle, whose look is said to bring death to anyone who catches her eye. According to local legend, the Green Lady was one of Queen Mary's chambermaids, who was charged with keeping an eye over Mary as she slept. Unfortunately, as the story goes, she fell asleep while on watch the night that Mary's chamber went up in flames. The girl managed to save her queen, but died from the injuries in the fire. There are tales of the Green Lady, of course glowing in a bright or dim green, or wailing in pain. There are tales of the smell of fire, the seeing of fire, or the seeing of smoke bellowing from wherever she decides to haunt. The Green Lady of Stirling Castle is a lady no longer waiting for the right reasons. The Cottony. The Cottony is a Scottish spirit similar to a banshee. It does cry significantly that something terrible might happen. One difference is that the Cottony tends to stick to waterfalls, rivers, and other small bodies of water, possibly bringing warnings of drowning or falling. One old tale from Scotland says that the Cottony would leave its watery home and visit the door of a family with an ailing member. The ghoul's moans would let them know that it was time to say their final goodbyes, leaving the water to warn you. The Cottony may be seen as a soul taker, one that will warn and give, hopefully, some closure to that lost soul's loved ones. The Three Knocks of Death. One of the most frightening harbingers of doom is the Three Knocks of Death. This one is not something you're going to creepily see approaching you. You're not going to see it howling below your window. You're not going to see it crossing a field in front of you. And this one can happen any time of day or night. Usually, if you hear the three knocks, it means that you or someone you know is in immediate danger. The fear of the number 3 seems to exist without a specific origin, but it's likely that the number 3 is seen as a demonic presence mocking the Holy Trinity. Owls. Friendly-looking owls hold a history of mysterious auras around them. They're at night looking, but what are they always looking for? Is it a prey that they want? Or are they looking for death to come? Hearing the hooting of an owl, especially outside of your window, or the window of a loved one, usually means that death is nearby. Maybe not that night, but within a short time period. Keep an ear out for those whoos that bring disaster. Saving the best for last, we have death itself, the Grim Reaper. Usually described as a tall being. Maybe you could say its face of a skeleton skull, maybe not. Maybe it's just dark and endless. The face, the body, the build, it changes depending on your story. Usually acquainted with a black cloth, a cloak, maybe a skiff or some other weapon in hand, usually a blade. But death, seeing the Grim Reaper for yourself, I have seen it. I've seen the creature tall, roughly 8 to 9 feet, standing above my bed. Black flowing cloth. However, the edge of my viewing of this, the cloth seemed to disappear in short little wispy tails. It seemed to stand above, studying, maybe scouting, but I didn't feel it was there to take anything. I think it was watching. It did have a skiff in hand, solid black, no shiny blade this time. The face, I can only see part of it, was a bony white. I couldn't tell you if it was a skull, but the fear that it brought, it was an empowering, overwhelming feeling. There was no question as to who or what it was. The being, the Grim Reaper, the Soul Taker. You know, without even opening your eyes, you know what it is. You feel it deep inside your soul. And luckily, this time, it wasn't there to take me or anyone that I know. And there you have it. Paranormal harbingers of doom seen before tragic events. You're listening to Sharky on Sharko's Chomp. Now feel free to submit your own stories to me at stories, STORIES, the number 4, Sharky, SHARKY, at gmail.com. And remember to listen out for those signs that could be harbinger of your own doom.